I call this workshop of the Conroe Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. Let the record show that a quorum of members is present. This workshop has been duly called, and the notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The time is now 6:03. Once again, thank you for taking time to be here tonight. I know we have a few trustees that had other events and such a busy time of year for everyone, and we certainly understand that. But we appreciate those of you that were able to make it in person. I know that our other three trustees, if they're not able to join us tonight, will watch this in the future online. So that's one of the nice things about having these things recorded as well. So our first item on the agenda is public comment in accordance with Board Policy BED and the Texas Government Code Section 551.007. Any citizen who has signed up in accordance with Board Policy BED may address the board regarding tonight's posted agenda items. Ms. Godfrey, have we had anyone sign up this evening? All right, thank you. So we will move on to item 2. So the focus of our board meeting, of our board workshop tonight, is really going to be to talk kind of all things bond. So we're going to take the approach of looking at the bond through many different lenses and really trying to make sure that you all are prepared for the onslaught of board items that are coming your way. And we thought rather than explain these things as you're seeing all these items and board items, you can see them ahead of time as far as the processes, understanding processes and how and why the way that we do things. And for us as well, it's just an understanding of while we have done this before, we're doing this now at a volume that is different than we've ever done it. It's a big amount. We want to make sure that we're ready to replicate kind of where we've been. So as we move to item 2, just want to give you a quick overview of really where we are, and Mr. Foster's going to narrow this down much further as he gives his portion of tonight's presentation. But this is just a kind of a big timeline of the bond process. And remind you, it goes all the way back to the summer of 22. You're going to hear us refer to this for the next 5 years as Bond 2023. That makes it sound like it was a moment in time event. The reality of Bond 2023 is that it started in 2022 and it will end in 2028. So it's quite the long process. And just to kind of give you the timeline reminder, we started back with facility assessments in the summer of 22. A year ago, our passive study. Then we began the formation of the bond planning committee. This time last year, we started the design process that you see kind of the fruits of here against the wall for some of the earlier buildings in this process. In this bond, we started that way back in January so that we could be ready to move into construction faster. February, we started with the bond planning committee. Into the summer, they made the recommendation. Shared all of that information with the community, and that took us to November of 2023 where we had the election. Propositions A, B, and C passed for a total of $1.973 billion, which is more than 3 times larger than our last bond. So, and I believe 3 times larger than even the second biggest bond in Montgomery County history. So there is a lot of moving parts now. And how do we move forward? And I know for a lot of folks, they initially think like, okay, we voted for the bond, the schools are going to open tomorrow, right? No, it's a process. And so here we go. And just a couple of the big highlights moving forward. In March of this year, you should see construction begin at some of the new buildings as far as visible, what you could see when you drive by. The process is already well underway. August of 2025 will be monumental because we'll open 2 new schools as part of this bond process. And then one of the next big highlights, because we do this only about every 10 years or so, is we'll open a new high school, and that will open in 2027. And then finally, the summer of 2028 is when we'll complete all of the projects in this bond. So here we are, we're really about a third of the way through at this point, and we've got quite a bit of ways to go moving forward. So once again, Mr. Foster will dig into a little bit deeper level when he goes to his portion, and Mr. Roebuck's going to tell us about how we actually secure the funds to pay for these things now that we have voter approval to do that. So that's just a brief overview. Hopefully that helps the community to see an idea of where we're headed and visually. Any questions or comments on this? Like I said, it's kind of we're going to get way deeper than this tonight. But all right, well, let's move to item 3, introduction of external review of planning and construction department and processes. So as part of previous bonds, we have hired an external auditor to come in and audit our jobs. And really the purpose of that external audit was to make sure that we as a district got what we paid for, right? And we have in-house an auditor that does that as well, but we've hired outside to come in and take that view. And what we learned through these processes is that, yes, we get what we pay for. Mr. Foster does an amazing job of keeping track of the work that we receive based on the guaranteed maximum prices that we've approved. We are getting exactly what we've paid for. So moving into this bond, really I think the question that we were asking internally was twofold. We know we get exactly what we paid for, but how do we make sure that we get the very best price up front? And we have our systems in place. That's really what we're going to spend the majority of tonight talking about. But how do we make sure that our processes are what yield the very best price? And then the second question that I had as we were looking at this was, based on the size of what we're doing now, being so much bigger, are the systems that we've had in place that have allowed us to be successful, are they scalable to this new pace and amount of work that we have, right? Or how do we guarantee we're not going to lose that oversight that we've had in this new bond? So rather than hire an external auditor to come in after the fact, we decided that this time, and with the direction of working with Mrs. Chase as the leader of our audit committee, ran this idea by her, and we've shared it with the whole audit committee, of bringing in an external review of the planning and construction department and processes through this bond. So we kind of set to work to find an expert. We were able to do that. I'm going to give him a chance to introduce himself to you today and share his credentials and just a brief overview of what his work is going to be. But really the focus was exactly the two things that I talked about. One, look at our processes, look at all the things that we do, how we procure work, all of our systems that are in place, and analyze those to see, can we get better? And then two, really look at the department personnel and staffing wise and make sure that we are in a place that we can do what we've been able to do historically with oversight at this new level and pace. So those are the two really big questions that we had for him. We've shared, like I said, we've shared this with the whole audit committee, but we wanted to invite him in today to introduce himself so that you would all get to know him, know the work that he's doing, and then the community will as well. He will report directly to the audit committee. So that's his charge, to really look at what he does. He'll give findings to Darren and myself so that we know as well, but he has free reign. He's working with Mr. Foster and will report directly to the audit committee with any notes that we have. So Mr. Robertson is here. It's just I think we've been fortunate to find an expert in the field, and while he's just beginning his work, so tonight is not really about an in-depth report from him at all. It's just really more for you to meet him and understand what his scope of work is. And I'll turn it over to you, sir, and let you make some introductions here of yourself and your work.
Thank you, Dr. Knoll. As he has said, my name is Robert Robertson, and I am a senior associate with Into Learning, and we have been tasked with conducting this assessment of which Dr. Knoll spoke of the Construction and Planning Department of Conroe ISD. And as he said, it's to assist administration in assuring that the district and the community are receiving the best value for their bond program. And so to do that, I will be reviewing the organization and the processes and the procedures that are in place that currently exist, have provided past success, and make sure that there is compliance and fidelity to the project management cycle from project initiation all the way to closeout. I'll analyze the resources available in the organization to accomplish the volume of projects anticipated, and I'll provide recommendations where appropriate. So in order to accomplish that, I'll give you a brief history or resume. I come from 23 years of outsourced facility management in corporate America. I worked for a company that provided facility management both at the higher education and K-12 segments of the market. After doing that for 23 years, I was what they called I was a process engineer. I would go in and conduct the financial and organizational analyses of the facility management departments and make recommendations for improvements. So I brought that expertise over to the client side, and for 13 years was associate superintendent of facilities and school services in a neighboring school district. And then the last year that I worked, I was chief of staff for the school district. So now I retired in 2022 and went to work with, from public education, and went to work with Into Learning to continue to assist school districts. And I'm excited to work with Conroe, Easy Foster and his team. I've known Easy for probably about 15 years. But I'm looking forward to analyzing and working together with him for the benefit of the students in the Conroe community.
And I know you're just getting started. I know, kind of tell us maybe like where you are, what you have started to look at, and
Certainly.
And
I've started with the procurement process of selecting contractors for the projects. I've gotten the document dump from Easy, and I'm reviewing contracts, general conditions, pay applications, et cetera, to see what processes are documented and how they are being followed in the project cycle. Just recently, yesterday, I was in Easy's office, and they hooked me up on project mates, so I can look at individual projects and make sure that what we say we do, we're actually doing, and have the documentation to support that. I have started the work on the organization chart, seeing what personnel, how many personnel, what's the talent of the staff, what are their qualifications, and comparing that to districts of similar size. So it's data collection and analysis at this point.
awesome, great. Is there anything you need that we haven't been able to provide you so far that we can help with?
No, sir. The staff's been very responsive, and rather than make a request and get them busy dumping stuff all at once, I'm just doing it as I finish a section, then I ask them for the next. So we've got interviews with staff scheduled for January.
Awesome, great. Jason.
Thank you for the introduction as well, and looking forward to your work. Do you plan on giving us interim observations and recommendations, or waiting till the end, or how should we expect to get feedback?
I can do it either way. I think as I finish an area, if we have an opportunity to go to the audit committee with some interim recommendations, if I see anything that needs to happen immediately, if it's a compliance issue or something like that, I'll bring that to the attention of the district to take care of. But so far, I have seen everything that's been right in line with what regulations and statute calls for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Ms. Hodenweller?
Yes, sir. I'm assuming since you've worked with several districts in your very many years in schools, you're used to working with whether it's CMAR or CSP bid processes?
Yes, ma'am.
And so what do you, when you all, I've seen easy spreadsheets. He digs in and looks at everything, but when I ask about subcontractors, how far do you all go down in your auditing process?
I'll be looking at the process of when they use a project delivery method like CMAR. I'll look to see how the department operates within that project delivery process. I know that when the general contractor puts out their bids, they have their bid day, that there are district representatives that are there that see the bids as they come in, and they, working with the general contractor in the CMAR process, vet the subcontractors and assist in the selection of the appropriate subcontractor for whatever the work is that needs to be done.
I understand that process. What I'm wanting to know is how far does the auditing go? Do you audit the reports that come out or the invoices or whatever that come from subcontractors to the contractors?
No,
or-
ma'am, I'm not doing a financial audit.
Okay,
of
you're
that
just
nature.
looking at the processes itself?
Right.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to know. Thank
Yep.
you.
Perfect. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. We look forward to your work and helping us learn along the way. So we appreciate you very much. All right. Moving on. Our next item will be the financial overview as we move forward into this bond of how we actually begin to sell the bonds and make the funds available to do the work. And here with us tonight, or I guess I'll introduce Mr. Rice, who can make our introductions as well.
Thank you, Dr. Knoll. This evening, we have with us Mr. John Roebuck. He is the district's financial advisor. Been with the district for?
Since 2004.
Since 2004, so a lot of familiarity with the district. And tonight, he's here to just kind of present a timeline of the process, some of the items that y'all will be seeing starting with the next week's board meeting as far as getting ready for our first bond sale. So with that, I'll let Mr. Roebuck take over.
Thank you, Mr. Rice, Dr. Knoll, members of the board. Thank you for having me this evening. Tonight, really, we're going to go through an overview of the process. You know, when I show up to have y'all approve a parameter order or the sale results, usually it's pretty fast. We're looking at the results, we're looking at the dates, and we're flying through the information. Kind of want to give an overview of how that process worked behind the scenes and the timeline to get us to where we sell bonds, deliver the funds, and the funds can be used to start the projects. In the presentation, I've got several sections. We're going to go through the first three, the preliminary timetable of events, and then we're also going to go through the final price and results of the refunding bonds we sold earlier this year, and then also how to purchase district bonds for residents who might want to purchase the bonds in the market where we sell bonds. The appendix, this is kind of an overview of a bond financing. It gives a little more detail, a little more description, a little more terms that we use in our business and our roles of each member. I'm not going to go through that. That's more for your viewing pleasure, and I'd be happy to answer questions next week when I come back to approve the parameter order, if you have any questions. And so the first one is the preliminary timetable events. This is kind of the timetable, the schedule of events that we go through for every bond sale, the dates that we need to hit to get to a sale date where we can sell the bonds and deliver the funds by a specific date to start the projects. We always start off with the preliminary official statement, and the preliminary official statement is this document right here. It's about almost an 90-page document that actually spells out the terms of the bond issue. It gives a great description of the district, the purpose of the bonds, the authorization for which the district can sell the bonds. It also provides information on state law, investment considerations, and also the terms, the principal amount terms of the bond sales that the investors will be looking at. This is provided ahead of time before the bond sale to investors who are interested in purchasing the bond. So this goes out to thousands of different investors for them to look at. There's a summary page in here that gives a nice summary of the terms of the sale. But they'll use this to determine if they can or want to buy the bonds on the day of sale. The second item which, and these have already taken place. We're already down to December 5th, where we are tonight. So the first 3 items have already taken place. We submit applications to the Permanent School Fund Guarantee of Texas. This is a state program that was put in place in the early 1900s to provide basically bond insurance for school districts. It allows the school district to apply for this. For $1,500, they get AAA status, so the highest rating you can possibly have, which in turn lowers your interest costs, borrowing interest costs. So it's the gold standard across the country, because right now there's not a single bond insurer out there that's got the AAA rating. They're all AA. So with your underlying rating, 1 notch below AAA and the AAA, y'all are going to be seen in the market by every investor out there if they're going to be interested in buying your bonds. And then we'll do another draft. As of yesterday, we actually received some information from Darren and Karen, and we were able to put that in the document. We got that out for everybody to look at, the internal team. And then the next date on here is the rating agencies and the diligence calls. We'll schedule these calls with the rating agencies and have a conversation with S&P and Moody's to go through the financials of the district, the employment trends, or enrollment trends, the valuations, taxable values, the growth, the projects going on within the district, the plans for these bonds, and the ability for the district to pay for these bonds. And they'll assign a rating, which I talked about is, again, AA plus, AA1, which is the highest rating you can have besides AAA. We'll come back to you on the 12th and ask you to approve a parameter order. And a parameter order is basically just a bond order that has parameters in it. We do this because it allows us, and I'll turn to the next page. This is the top part is the language we actually ask you to approve. And we set this parameter because it gives us an opportunity, the flexibility to sell bonds when there's not a school district board meeting date. We pick a date and time usually that's tentative out there. We're going to sell the bonds, and that could fluctuate depending on market conditions. If we see a day in the market that's going to be a little better a couple of days before our scheduled date, we'll move the sale up. If we see that's not going so well, we'll push it back a couple of days. But this gives us a flexibility to name a pricing officer that actually has the ability to approve the bond issue on behalf of the school board as long as certain parameters are met. And those pricing officers are defined in past bond orders as the president or the secretary of the board, superintendent of school, or the chief financial officer. And historically, I believe, Dr. Knoll, you've signed most of the documents in the past to the parameter order. But these parameter orders provide a not to exceed amount. So we'll put a limitation on the amount of bonds we can sell and a maximum interest rate, and it's usually good for about 180 days. So the parameter order does give us flexibility to enter the market when the timing is right, and also delay it if we need to. The next date on here, we will receive the preliminary school fund guarantee about December 21st. Oh,
Go back one screen. I got it.
oh, sorry.
I got you.
Thank you. And at the same time, we'll be working on the offering document. At this point, we'll have underwriters review it also, get their comments to the offering document, preliminary official statement. And then we'll print the document on December 29th, and we tentatively have the bond sale scheduled for Wednesday, January 10th, so the second week in January. It'd be great to go the first week, but people are still going to be on vacation. We want to make sure everybody's back in the office paying attention to the bonds so we get the most interest from the investors. And then we have about 30 days before we close. So between pricing and closing, your bond counsel will actually take the documents from the parameter order, and provide to the Attorney General of Texas, and they'll approve the bond issue. And then it will close. And on February 6th, the district will receive the funds for the projects. And then the next section,
Mr. Roebuck, could you just share with the board what type of entities are out there looking to purchase our bonds?
majority of them, well, there are all kinds of entities. There's mutual funds, there's insurance agencies, like State Farm Travelers will come in. You have really firms that are designed just to trade bonds. They're called basically, there are various terms, some are bad, some are good, but you have basically about 1,000 different firms will look at this. We track and see bonds or investors who buy these bonds, and they're from all ranges. I mean, they're all industries. You actually have other school districts will buy your bonds also because they're eligible investment under Texas Investment Code. You also have residents buy them. My job as your financial advisor is to, although I would love to see your residents buy them, my job is to make sure that the rates are so low they don't want to buy them. So I get in trouble sometimes. I give the results, and some lady will stand in the back and say, "I wanted to buy the bonds, but I'm not going to get 2%." I want 5%. Well, sorry, I did my job. So that's a good thing. But yeah, there's all kinds of different investors, and they come and go in the market too, depending on the tone of the market, depending on how much money they have to invest, how much cash they need to basically tie up. And again, with your rating, they have certain different rating buckets they have to fill up also. So, but given your history and again, the name across the country, you're going to generate a lot of interest from investors. It makes my job easier, honestly.
Good, thank
Any questions on that? Okay. And then the next section is the final pricing results from the refunding we did earlier this year. We did refund $52.6 million, a little less than we initially planned just because the market was a little rough. Rates went up. Rates have come back down since then. Actually, the last 2 weeks, rates have come down about 40 to 50 basis points. So we're going to the first of next year for this bond sale, which will be very good for our projections. But those all have about 5% interest rate, so we refunded them at a low interest rate. And as a result, on the next page, we saved $3 million, almost $3.1 million, which is a net present value of 4.3%, about $200,000 except for 1 year, every year. And then the source and uses, oops, there we go. We sold $51 million to refund that $52.6 million. The all-cost interest rate on the refunding bonds was a 4.281% compared to the 5% on the refunded bonds. As a result, we were able to save that $3,091,000. The present value is about $2.2 million, and again, the present value savings is 4.312. And we closed this bond issue on November 21st and locked in the savings. And those bonds we refunded are no longer outstanding, no longer the obligation of the district.
We did not extend the term on any
We
of these,
did not
correct?
extend the term, and it actually, you can see here, you can see the bonds that were refunded went out to 2039, and the bonds we issued went out to 2039. So it's purely an interest cost play. Generate that savings. And then how to purchase bonds. We get this question all the time when we sell bonds, especially going through a bond election process. The community is interested in buying bonds. Raymond James and Piper Sandler, who you have on here, have been the senior manager of the last 2 bond issues. We'll update this once the board approves the underwriters for this coming bond sale. But typically, we provide this information so that you can contact the senior manager because they'll be the ones who actually can allot the bonds or give the bonds to the investor. And in the case, we're going to have a priority policy. Basically, it says the residents get first priority to these bonds over other investors, so they get the access to the bonds first. But call these investors or these banks a couple days in advance, let them know you're interested, and they'll call you the day of pricing and lock in your rate or lock in the bonds you want to buy. But we'll update this and provide this to Darren once we have the team in place. And really, that's all I have. Like I said, the last part is appendix, kind of overview of a bond financing, read at your leisure, and if you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thank you, Mr. Roebuck. Any questions or comments for Mr. Roebuck? Okay.
Will we get into like the schedule of, like how much are we taking out this first time?
The first sale is going to be
Yeah.
$595 million.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you have like the proposed schedule for it or?
Yeah, that'll be in the board agenda item you see
Next
week.
for
On
next
Friday.
Tuesday.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you'll
Thanks.
get it on Friday.
All right. Thank
The
you.
second, I know it's nothing is firm yet, but the first sale is 5.
$595.
$595.
And next year, anticipate being a little larger sale.
It's going to be closer to 700.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Roebuck.
Thank you.
All right. We'll transition and let you guys, we'll switch out the table here. And then everybody rotate through. All right. All right, moving forward to our next agenda item, we're going to move on to the planning and construction overview as Mr. Foster is going to share with us just the big picture of construction all the way, and we're going to get a little bit more to those spreadsheets that you can't read. I sent them ahead of time. If you really wanted to read them, you could blow them up. I hope you have a big screen TV. But the amazing thing is all those spreadsheets actually live in Mr. Foster's head, and he knows them all. But I want to make this clear before we jump into this section. I believe that we have the absolute very best person leading our department, and like the fact that we've brought Mr. Robertson in to look at our systems is not an indication that we don't believe that they're strong. It's an indication that for all of us, if there's a way we can get any better, we'd love to. And at the same time, we want the public to be able to know what we see internally, and so and this has been a process that Mr. Foster has fully embraced. There's not a lot of people that have that much confidence in themselves and the job that they do to fully embrace something like this. So I appreciate that, Mr. Foster, you and your team and the work that you do. I want you to know that. And,
Thank you.
And it's really what you do is amazing, and we want to make sure that as we go through this, it's the benefit of doing this in a workshop. It's built for conversation, right? So easy could turn this into a 5-day presentation if you want. We don't want that necessarily, but at the same time, it's not a problem if you want to stop, you want to get deeper, have questions. That's just, we can turn it into conversation along the way as we go. So, all right, Mr. Foster?
Indeed. So thank you for having me here this evening, and to echo what Dr. Null said, we are continually improving, looking for ways to get better. So the idea of entertaining Mr. Robertson in our department to help have a fresh set of eyes, because we know we can get stuck in a rut, so to speak. So a new way to look at what we're doing is always welcomed. External audit, I am passionate about defending what we do. So I've met a few external auditors who didn't like my attitude. But at the end of the day, it was all for the betterment of the district, and that transparency that we all strive is what we're after. This really is what we want to talk to you a little bit about tonight, and that transparency process. So if you would look at our planning and construction website on the Conroe ISD website, our department exists to serve all the students, the faculty, and the staff through collaboration. We plan and construct safe and efficient, attractive facilities with the highest level of expertise and financial accountability. So the financial accountability is something I take particular pride in. It's one of those things that's my special topic of interest. If you're ever worked with people that have special topics, that would happen to be mine, which is not a bad thing. I do want to take a little bit to talk about the team that we're working with. So in my department, from myself through our lowest level, there's 11 of us, including me. But I want to introduce a couple of our key players tonight. So my assistant director for planning, who's relatively new with the district, been with us for a month, is Miss Rebecca Carranza Hicks. So she's waving. And so we brought her on board and created the position so that we can, have a better, more research-based planning effort relative to curriculum instruction to our facilities. Somebody who speaks the curriculum instruction language and the architectural and design language. So Miss Carranza Hicks comes from a design firm that we've worked with in the past and brings an expertise to us that I am absolutely glad we have. So I can be a bit straightforward, and sometimes our campus administrations don't feel welcomed when I'm trying to tell them what we're going to do. So Miss Carranza Hicks can help us soften my personality with the people by speaking their language and interpreting correctly for us. Likewise, on the other end of the equation, when we deal with contractors, Mr. Ryan Atterbury is behind me as well. Ryan is our assistant director for construction. So, and if you can imagine, in planning and construction, having divided interest is always problematic, particularly when you're scheduling many events. So splitting planning from construction is going to help us be more efficient in the delivery method. So Ryan comes from a contractor background. He comes from a surety background, so he comes with the tools necessary to monitor construction. He's been with us for a couple of years now, so he's not new to the district. But he's been our assistant director for construction for about a year. He was our construction manager, which is our senior level management staff we had 2 years ago before that. But those two key players are going to help us monitor the work that goes on throughout the district. Our project coordinators are our on-site management staff, so that's Tansy, Lane, Sterling, Zach, Michael, and Mr. Knapp. Point out that David Knapp is a part-time, so we really have 5.5 project managers for what we're doing. But this is our team that really kind of interacts day-to-day with the contractor and the design teams and over the execution of the program. And I want to pay particular special attention to Miss Courtney Rogers, our contract specialist. I mentioned to Mr. McCord the other day, she's got 1.9 billion things to worry about right now because she literally handles every dollar that comes through our department. So she is very capable and very on task with our finance department and our contractors, make sure budgets are appropriate where they're and allocated where they need to be, and then also making sure as invoices come in, they are coordinated and paid according and timely. And Irene helps keep is the glue that keeps us all together. So Irene, when you come into our office, she'll be the friendly face that answers the phone, answers the door, and make sure you get to the right location as well. But this is our entire planning and construction team for everything we have going and underway throughout the district.
Can I make a comment just on that team?
Absolutely.
So this team has grown in the last year, so we've been trying to scale it up as we've been preparing for where we are today. I agree with Easy on the splitting of planning and construction is going to be really crucial. One of the things that's unique to us that we ask a lot of our assistant superintendents over the schools. So it's part of our organizational structure. If you are the assistant superintendent for elementary and you're Dr. Winkler, you're not only overseeing 40 elementary schools, the curriculum side of what's going on, the discipline, all parent complaints come to their offices. They do supervise the principals, they do all those things. But for us, they also are the voice of elementary education in the planning and construction department. So they're also the one that is there trying to help guide the design of a building, which they're really great at when they're in the room, but then at the same time, they're pulled a million different directions. And so if a meeting occurs and they can't make it in there, sometimes we have seen that we've lost the school voice in the room. And perhaps it might just be one meeting, but something might take a left turn, and then by the time the school person gets back in the room next time, it goes, we've got to get back. That's where Ms. Kronza Hicks comes in. She's going to play a key role. She is that voice of, we say the schools, but the voice of the assistant soups, because she will be meeting directly with them and then going out and meeting directly with school staff, so that she is the voice of schools and it's ever present in planning construction instead of when the assistant soups can be there. So I think that is a giant shift for us, but is going to pay really big dividends along the way as well. So, yeah.
Hey, Easy.
Yes, ma'am.
The project coordinators, are they involved from design phase, or do they get involved just in execution, or and how many projects would they be managing at one time?
Well, I mean, so keep in mind there's a wave of projects coming through, so they don't all start and don't all finish.
Of course.
Which will show you the graphic of the schedule in a minute. But right now, the 23 bond package has 40 design packages in it, which is multiple campuses in some of those, but 6 divided by 40 is 7 or 8 each. Some of those start now, so there's a package of about 18 bid packages or selection packages that are being advertised over the next several weeks. So that's about 3 each during that process, and then some will start as those go, some more come on. So there's always something in design over the next 5-year period, always something in construction, and always something closing out until we get to 2028. And the fun part of our process is the next process will start in that time as well, too. So there will be more things, more growth, more things to plan. The next cycle of capital projects happens during that process as well. It's one thing being able to divide planning from construction helps me be able to focus on the longer range plan, which is where my focus needs to be, and I'll show you a graphic for that in just a few minutes. But do we have enough? And that's where Mr. Robertson
Yes,
may
that's my
feel like
question.
we're talented and have the right people. He may recommend some additional staff.
Okay.
One of the things we do pride ourselves on is keeping a small staff, and the way we handle our business currently helps us keep that staff small. When we interview people, we talk about the power of 1 and 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 11 for the people that work for our department. Because if you can't produce more with a partner than 2 people can produce individually, then our team, we didn't pick the right person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we want to be super productive because that is the best thing for the taxpayer. If we can keep our staff low, we keep the tax rate low, and so it's something we're cognizant of.
I totally agree with you. A lean staff and a productive staff is great, but we don't, knowing the scope of work that we have ahead of us, we don't want to be broken by one person leaving.
Oh,
So, okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
I can't emphasize enough either that these people, these men and women, they're boots on the ground. And they're constantly interfacing with the principal and the campus administration also. So they are there, and then they're checking in with us. They're really key to making it happen, whether it be the contractors or subcontractors, but with campus administration.
And we're going to talk about the partnership of the delivery process we use in a minute, and that helps us with monitoring, coordination, things of that nature. So we're oversight of a program that, in theory, doesn't need us in order to move forward. So we hire design professionals, we hire competent contractors. They have a task and a target. We're basically monitoring the target. We're not checking individual nuts and bolts. We have other processes for those. We'll talk about those in a minute. But we are monitoring the end goals for the project. What are we doing? Are we meeting our financial goals? Are we on schedule? Things of that nature. And as we move forward through our presentation tonight, and we do welcome questions over any time, we're doing all this under a litany of government codes, education code, administrative code, occupations code, government code, our local policy manual, our district operating procedures, and individual municipality and building codes. So we have City of Conroe, City of Oak Ridge, City of Shenandoah, the Woodlands Township, Montgomery County, South Montgomery County. As we develop further and further south, we are actually blinking on the City of Houston's radar screen. So as we move south of Grand Oaks, we will get into the City of Houston's ETJ at some point in the future. We're not there yet, but we're constantly aware of who's looking at. When we submitted the plans to the county for Hines Elementary, for example, the City of Houston called and said, we'd like to see those too. And we fight the good fight. Not yet. We're not there. Look at the line. We're not past that line yet, but we are close enough to them that they're monitoring what's going on in our
Easy,
neighborhood.
where is the line?
Somewhere south of Grand Oaks in undeveloped land currently.
So is it Montgomery County?
No, their jurisdiction moves beyond Harris County. We're fully within Montgomery County in our district, but their extraterritorial jurisdiction is not contained by Harris County. So it crosses Spring Creek somewhere south of Grand Oaks in the
So
tree.
Spring
so to
Creek
speak.
is not the divider.
Spring Creek is not the dividing line, correct?
So that, if you think of that, the visual image of our district, that tail, so that tail will be Townsend Boulevard, will be the road that will go down that tail. So once they start developing Townsend to the south, that's when we'll cross into Houston's
So
ETJ.
Right, I've been studying that, and there's some utility right-of-ways. Whereabout is the line?
I mean, I would have to, I know we're close enough that we're on their radar screen. But if you draw a circle like through Kingwood High School, Kingwood, and kind of make a big circle around Houston.
Like you have the river and then Spring Creek.
Yeah, that clearly hits that tail somewhere south of Grand Oaks, between Grand Oaks High School and the Deerbrook Mall, which is way down at the tip of that tail.
Thank you.
So, in speaking to that timeline that Dr. Knoll put on the screen to start our presentation tonight, and most of you as board members in your orientation saw this too, we're talking about processes in our department that span a number of years. Dr. Knoll put one up that said 2022 to 2028, and he didn't tell you that I asked him if I could start in 2020, because time is always our friend until we run out of time, and it no longer is our friend. By the time we determine we need an elementary school, from the inception to the teaching kids, is about 73 months, right? So you're looking at a 6-year-long process, which is longer than most bond cycles, which is longer than many things. For a junior high and high school, we look at that for about 8 years. I mean, so we're thinking about it way long into the future, and because we're thinking that far ahead on what's going out there. We're often presumptive. We need to presume that there will be a bond in the future. We need to presume that there will be legislation, and what are the things happening around us. I saw legislation changing in 2020 at the TEA and the administrative code level that said, hey, Dr. Null, we need to be taking a look at this. And then that's what led to our ed spec that y'all approved last January, and some of the other things that are going on in our department currently as we move through this 2023 bond program. Growth is something that, the crystal ball changed on us here in the recent years. The rapidly changing society and technology. We've got examples of if you're thinking about a high school over an 8-year period, and think about when iPads became prevalent in education. We had schools that were planned 3 years before iPads came in and finished a year or two after iPads were common. Where do you plug the iPad in that building that was under construction when they became what every teacher used in their classroom? So we try to foresee what's changing, and it's hard because technology changes so quickly, but we're trying to look way out into the future so that we can plan appropriately and be ready. We also look at the very bottom of our list is what other school districts and other municipalities are doing. When is the next county road bond? When is the next, the Woodlands Township Incorporation election? If that passes, that changes how we interact with them. Things like that are things that we're often flavor what we're planning in our department. As we dive off into our delivery processes, the government code, so it's the Texas Government Code, Chapter 2269, defines the processes that we can use for construction. And I say we as a local government agency. So counties, cities, school districts, junior colleges, things like that are bound to these delivery methods. I'm in year 11 in my career here at Conroe ISD. We have used competitive bidding, competitive seal proposals, construction manager at risk, design build, and job order contracting. So whenever it's appropriate, we use the right delivery method. So job order contracting, bottom list, is really for things that don't exist. It's maintenance that do exist, rather. They're maintenance type projects. And when we ask for our capital funds to be used for those, it's a long board item name. If you remember the names that are a whole page long, that's when we use that particular method. As we move forward, our local board policy, CV, local facilities construction, establishes construction manager at risk as the best value for Conroe ISD for projects above $100,000. So that is in the government code. It says if you're not using competitive bidding, then the agency must declare. So Conroe ISD wrote a board policy that establishes CM at risk as our default mechanism as best value for the district. Absolutely.
Because when I went to look, because it wasn't there, and that's, as Ms. Galatas knows, I'm like, I like that code and all the definition of it there, but when I went to look at it, it says if another method is deemed to provide the best value to the district for a particular construction project, it can be considered, and shall submit a recommendation for the board to consider, determine, and approve prior to advertising to project delivery, contract, and award methods.
Absolutely.
So that's part of it, but if there's another option, if we want to consider other options, we can.
And we can, and I'll give you a great example. A couple of years ago when we had to replace the scoreboards at the two stadiums and the natatorium, which are revenue generating items. So they ultimately pay for themselves in the course of their operation because of advertising sales and things like that. We could have hired an architect and a construction manager because it was big enough, and then who had hired a design build scoreboard contractor to design those and build those scoreboards. In that method, I suggested to Dr. Knoll and our administration, that is perfect for design build. So we came to the board, asked for that option, the board approved it, and then we went through the process to run that particular contract as design build. There's some other things that go along with design build that make it not friendly for other jobs, but for that one it made perfect sense because the prime designer wasn't going to be an architect, it was going to be a scoreboard designer and a little bit of structural and civil engineering. Immediately after the policy passed, it's been 10 or 11 years ago, the very first project I brought to Ms. Galatas after that was enacted was a competitive bid because that project was a defined box. It didn't have any variables, so competitive bid made more sense than anything else. Why would you not hire the lowest bidder for, effectively a concrete box as a parking lot job? I mean, so whenever those things come up, we absolutely put the best value up in front when it's not CM at risk.
The one thing I did have trouble with was when I went to 2269.056, I was trying to find in there where it said that CMAR was the preferred method. That's where I was trying to find it.
So the preferred method is established by our local CV.
Okay,
CV
well, I
policy,
just did,
correct.
when it was in with that, that's why I was.
Yeah, so
wondering.
if we, the district, had not established a preferred method, then 2269 says it must be competitive bidding. So if it's not competitive bidding, then there has to be permission to use any of the other methods.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was reading that properly and understanding that it didn't actually state CMAR, it just.
No, that's just one of the options they
Okay,
allow.
it's in our local
Yes.
area. That's
Yep.
where I found it. Okay, thank you.
All right, so you, our board, have a board policy that establishes CMAR as our best value, and the attributes of a construction manager at risk are really a partnership. And I mentioned partnership before because the partnership between the owner, the architect, and the contractor to develop a project is what helps us, one of the things that helps us keep our staff relatively small. Because we look to quality contractors who have experience doing negotiated work in schools. Every once in a while, we get somebody from the outside who's qualified, but schools are a special organization to work for, and we're a special contracting delivery method process and special levels of accountabilities dealing with all public funds. So the partnerships are valued, a great value, and they help us keep our staff relatively small. That partnership, or at least the process, allows us to select our construction manager based on qualifications. So that's what we actually opened 2 project qualification packages today. We had 8 construction firms respond to each of those 2 different packages that came out. And once we grade the qualifications, there is a pricing, a sealed competitive pricing situation for that selection process. They're competing on percent fees on the overall final cost. Once they're on board and we develop a project, the construction trades are then sealed and competitively bid to that construction manager at their office. We handle the advertising to make sure it actually gets out in the marketplace and meets all the requirements the state requires for advertising. But then the construction trades themselves, bids come in. I mean, on an elementary school, we may have 300-400 different trade bids. The high school may have 1,200 to 1,500 different trade bids. So we work with the architect and the contractor and go through those and analyze risk and look for new people, look for people who are qualified, look for people who are underqualified, who may have eyeballs too big for the project they're on. We look for, and like I pointed out at our last board meeting, one where we coached a construction manager to reach out to somebody who bid the job they didn't know. It saved the district $100,000. So that I guarantee that contractor had never done a school in Conroe before, learned a lot, but it was something that we coached them and they saved money on. That was an area of risk that we discussed. So having somebody, that particular subcontractor was from out of town coming into Conroe. But we talked about the risk. We actually had the contractors, they brought them in and interviewed and talked to them. And then we set them all up, agreed to take that into our guarantee maximum price before we brought it to you for approval. One of the things, and one of the most important things that I believe construction manager at risk is the costs are open book. They are fully transparent. They are subject to a financial audit by me, by internal audit, by an external audit if we choose. And we're going to look through every line item of cost on that job before we recommend to you, our board, pay them their final payment on that project.
Doesn't that work the same thing with CSP? Don't they have to do exactly what we tell them? When we tell them what product or quality or standard to use, don't they have to do exactly what we ask for and that's checked?
So the answer to that question is yes, question mark, but, right? So what I'm talking about here is the financial audit. So a CSP yields a lump sum contract, which inherently is not subject to audit. So if they say it's $30 million to build X, and we agree, we're going to pay them $30 million to build X. In a construction manager at risk, If it's $30 million to build X, and we agree it's $30 million to build X, they finish, and it comes in at $29 million, there's savings. We can recoup that savings or choose to spend and get that extra $1 million of value for some other work.
But don't they, when they do it on the CSP, because I've spoken with multiple board members, probably 8 different districts at this point. And some of them not in the immediate area, some in the greater Houston area, some in the Dallas area. And all of them have said that they've gotten money back on CSP. I mean, that it's not, or the only time that they're seeing that they're not getting money back is if the scope of the project changed, in the sense that they said, oh, at that school, they need new carpeting in that room, or could you please use the extra to go pay we still have money left? Okay, let's do this in this area, and it's kind of a bad rap is what I've heard when I've been talking with other board members.
It is, and there's so many different lenses to view this process from the outside. But we do the same thing with CMAR, except it's fully transparent. In a CSP contract, now you can write any language into any contract, but the typical contracts are not transparent. So I ask you, our CSP contractor, do you have any money left? And you go, yeah, I got some money left. Let's spend it on the school district. They don't have to. They could say, nope, we're done. And there's no recourse.
They don't
to
provide
get into
us
it.
with any invoices or any documentation of what they spent the money on?
So it all depends on how the contracts are written, but the base model, where we would start with the base CSP contract is not written that way. We would have to take language that is inherent to the CM at risk contract and apply it to the CSP contract in order to be able to do that. It is possible, but it is not that they're one delivery method is built for lump sum agreements, and one is built for negotiated, fully open book accounting.
Okay.
All right. Ooh, we went too far. Right. Oh, my goodness.
Can you
All right.
define, I know the distinction that you make, you use the term value. Can you define value versus price, just for clarity's sake?
Well, and that is a kind of a difficult thing to kind of put your around. But value, and we've all heard the term built by the lowest bidder, and it's usually in a negative context. So that is price. The lowest price wins. You usually get what you pay for is what people end up coming out with. When you look at value, you're looking for it may not be the least expensive price, but I'm assured they're going to be here. They're going to do the job. They've got the experience to live through our accounting processes. They've got the experience and reputation to generate interest in the marketplace amongst subcontractors. So we've got, when we look at overall value, we're looking at what we get from an experience with working through somebody through a business relationship, through the final product, for quality, for on-time delivery, for fully transparent accounting, things of that nature. But lowest price isn't always, sometimes it is the right choice, but it's not always the right choice. So, and that's really, when you look at CSP in its language, even in the government code, it allows for negotiation of value, not necessarily lowest price, but CSP inherently and in the code requires price to be a much higher weighted target than it is in construction manager at risk. So when we, and I didn't have the slide, and this is probably the one question you could have asked that I would presented a slide for, but in CSP, the code calls for 50% weight applied to price. And if you've got a contractor who's never built a school before, comes into the school business not understanding that, for example, our contract is written for no rain delays. The start day of school cannot change. And if they're not ready to deal with that, then they may go insolvent or walk away when they figure out they can't make up the time to open the school on time. So we've got, their price may artificially put them in the driver's seat to winning that bid when that's not the right choice, and all of us sitting at the same table might agree that that is not the right choice to make.
And I want to tell you, I met with you, I met your team, and I have the ultimate respect for you and your processes and everything you do and overwhelming with the spreadsheets. I'm asking, not because I'm trying to say I don't believe you or I don't trust. I just want you to know that I'm asking because if there was one thing I heard so much about during the whole time of running and now serving and going into the bond and all of that, I kept hearing these same questions. So I'm doing this asking mainly so people are hearing answers and hearing responses to things that they wouldn't necessarily everyday Joe see or hear. So
Indeed.
I just want you to know that. It's not an attack or anything like that. So it's
Well-
not meant to be a drilling or a grilling.
No, and I'm happy to be drilled and grilled. I mean, so this is the reason I need Ms. Carranza Hicks to talk to campus principals, because it looks like I'm upset, but I understand.
You didn't look that way, promise.
good.
I just
And
want
I
you
appreciate
to-
that.
I just wanted you to know that because I do have a bunch of questions and I don't want you to think that that's the reason why I'm doing it. So I just
No,
wanted
and-
to be upfront and tell you that out.
Yeah, and I'll be open and honest. In the general industry, CM at risk and CSP are at odds with each other all the time. And I can tell you, if I was not a construction professional by education and training, I may feel differently. If I came from the education side into construction, it might make more sense to look at a different method. But from where I'm sitting and with my experiences and expertise, because I was a contractor, when I had the opportunity to make money with an owner who didn't understand their delivery system, I did. I'm not going to lie to you. That's why I tell my staff all the time that our contractors are out there to make a profit. And if they can make a better profit because you don't know what you're doing, they will, right? I mean, so that's why we spend a lot of time in training and understanding with our folks. And we run through and we look through a lot of things from the contractor lens. So it's something that expertise that some educators may not be able to bring to the table without a lot of experience the hard way, so to speak. But I'm happy to answer questions all through this process.
Easy, before we move on though, once you get to the bid level to subcontractors, there's a lot of elements of CSP within CMAR.
Absolutely. So all those subcontractor bids come in just like they would to us. If we were a CM agent district, for example, we would receive all those subcontractor bids ourselves. I am not recommending that as a delivery method. And all the architects behind me all just went, what? Because they wouldn't expect me to even bring that method up, because that's a different level of risk that we're not equipped to take on as a school district. But that's why we have a construction manager on board to help gather all those things. But I will tell you that construction managers are their own worst enemy, because if you leave them to their own devices, they'll pick their buddies and friends and put together a guaranteed maximum price that we can't live with. And one of the other ends of the CMA risk process is we can always take it back from them and issue it as a CSP when the drawings are done. I mean, so we always have the option to come back and check the market with a bid at the GC level if we're not satisfied throughout the process, which is
That's-
jumping way forward in our slides.
That is one of the concerns that was kept coming to me, is that when you're doing CMAR, you've developed these friendships and buddy system and friends with all the contractors and everything. And so that inherently ends up being a concern or a red flag to the public and the taxpayers, and so that is what the whole and I'm going to just be honest, the other thing that I heard, which really doesn't, I don't think affect you or your team, but those are the same people that sponsor a breakfast that we have in the spring, and then that comes into question. Wait, that's not looking right either, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'm going along that transparency and asking the questions, because when I was looking at CSP and I was asking the questions on CSP, and then people were sharing why they choose that method in other districts and so forth, it's because it's detailed. You're bidding what you're going to get, and you're getting exactly what the level of what you're asking for. And so, and I mean, that's where that mindset was coming to when they were coming at me with it, and when I was asking questions on it, why one over the other. So that's that was one of the reasons why, when you said that, it made me think of it, so.
You're right. I think in any one of our individual conversations has about 100 rabbit trails on something else we can dive down into. But all those conversations are, not invalid. I will say, I mean, if you can stop me if I'm overstepping, but when it comes to like the Education Foundation breakfast, I was very explicit with Dr. Stockton before, and Dr. Knoll since. I'm not soliciting any of our vendors or contractors for money. If you call me and ask me to call them, the answer is going to be no. So that doesn't happen through our department at all. So that's all those solicitations happen at the foundation level, which is wholly outside of Conroe ISD.
I'll just also mention, so we did ask, Mr. Robertson's going to be looking also at our contract delivery method. So he's going to look at CSP versus CMAR and how that relates. Because there are, Mr. Foster could talk about this for days, but there's a million different things you'd have to look at. One would be like staffing. If you're going to be a CSP district, we'd probably have to at least double our staff in P&C.
And see, I heard the opposite. We don't end up with the staff level increase, so.
Well, and I, if we need to, I've got an example of a peer district that has more than
What are
double
they,
our
30?
staff.
Like
34.
Sci-Fair has 34. They had a 1.97.
1.72 building, yeah.
$1.7 billion bond. They have 34 members of their PNC to do that. We have 13. One of the other issues that we have, and Easy can get into this way more than me, but some of it is about timing and forethought as well. We tend to be a place that waits till the very last minute to build a school. Hence, 5,400 kids across the street, and we're 3 years away from opening a high school. Depending on delivery method you use affects how quickly you can open a school. So if we were to move to CSP on let's just say, one of the elementaries that we see over here, give an example of just timing-wise. Because if you could plan out further, I think CSP becomes more attractive.
Indeed.
Right.
So like the competitive seal proposal method up here it's a very linear process. So we would engage a design professional to design the campus. Then once the design is complete, then we would advertise it for bids to the general contractors. They don't have any input on that. They don't see it until it's publicly advertised for the world. So what we run into is a risk. You get exactly what you design as long as you're watching it. So that's where the additional staff comes through. But you also, you run the risk of a budget overrun you weren't aware of, right? So, because one thing the architects and the contractors usually disagree on is how much something costs. So that's why we, on the construction manager and risk side, partner them together, doing budget checks all along the way, so that when we get to bid day, we should not be surprised at the outcome. So there is a risk of surprise at the outcome in the CSP model. But our normal design process is about a year long for any particular project. Then we would need to submit it for permits, and depending on the municipality, that could take 3 or 4 months. And then we would be able to bid and start the work. Because if we bid the work and then didn't get a permit for 3 months, we can't start the work till we get a permit, so the bid expires and we get to do it again. So with the CM at risk, there's things that we can do in early bid packages to get going while we're in the bid review process, because we've accounted for anything that the city could come up with, for example, that might affect our overall budget. So that partnership works because the contractor and the architect and the district can partner with the city too, or the county or any other municipality in pre-development meetings to help move the process along. Inherently, you'll read some of if you just Google the two and come up with some of the folks that we looked for supporting documents on, everybody we looked at said CSP tends to be a longer process than CMRS. CMRS tends to be faster, and it has been for us. I mean, the ability to start not in 2020 but 2022 on a process that yields the first school opening in 2025, which is only a 3-year window when I told you it takes 72, 73 months to get an elementary school open from the concept to the finish. I mean, so that's all inherent in that. We would be closer to that 72-month process with the CSP project. It requires us to buy the land ahead of time, right? So we have one that's bidding in January that we will own the land next week if the attorneys get all their I's dotted and T's crossed before we break for the holiday. But we wouldn't be able to do that particular project that way without seeing at risk, because the civil engineers are still talking to each other and speculating on what the final design documents are going to be. We can budget for them, and when we're comfortable with the overall budget, we'll bring it for you for approval, but we'll be able to still open that school on time.
Hey, Easy, is
Yes,
that,
ma'am.
is that the Evergreen?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it not, I mean, well, isn't it possible that we could split it, like do the civil engineering part and the structural engineering, so that we could do the bid process for civil part, the groundwork, the pads, I mean, not the pad being put in, not the concrete or anything, but all the other stuff that leads up, couldn't we bid that process first? That would keep us going on, say, our new elementary designs, where we
Right.
would be able to
With-
keep going with the structural engineers and the design teams and the architects?
With
For-
seam at risk, we can.
But you could do that with CSP, couldn't
No,
you?
ma'am, you cannot.
You can't bid just that part?
No, because once the general contractor wins, everything beyond that becomes a change order. And we know change orders are,
But you could break it up as that this is just bid this part, and then you're going to do a different bid on the other part. That's the Italian in me.
so, but if you, like, for example, if you bid a site package that had clearing and grubbing to one general contractor, and then bid a building package that could be a different general contractor, they are not going to trust anything the first contractor did, nor warrant anything the first contractor did. So you would, the method to do what you're describing is within the CMRS process. All right. And I'll tell you how we get to that as we move through that, right? So step one, we determine there's a need, which is a long process. We've been talking about where we might need schools for several years. But let's say, for this example, we determine there is a need. There's a new school that we need, or a renovation of some type. Once we determine that need, in that process of putting together facilities, planning committees, and bond planning activities, and all the other things that go into funding that side, we advertise for the architects and the other professional services. Now, this is a step we go that's above and beyond what the code requires us to do, because we issue a formal RFQ to have a committee participate in the selection of these firms. The code says we can pick the right person based on established or qualifications and merit. They cannot compete against each other with price. I mean, but we go through the process of advertising, receiving requests for qualifications. And our selection committee is often a little bit larger than what we're describing, but at a minimum, it is required to be one person for planning and construction, one person from maintenance, one person from the executive leadership, which is our central administration. Purchasing oversees everything that we do. And then in addition, we usually add one person from finance, because we're talking about multi-million-dollar companies that have assets and liabilities all over. We want to make sure we're analyzing their finances appropriately. And then once we make a selection, then we can negotiate fair and reasonable prices for individual projects. And then we always have the ability to reach out to another designer if there's a specialty need that arises during the course of our work. But for the majority of what we do, we're creating a pool of architects and professional services to help us through these bond planning and project development processes. So in December of 2022, you, our board, approved our pool of design firms, architecture, engineering, and commissioning agents. So in these, the architects are represented in the room tonight. We've got a series of engineering firms we work with too, which are generally working with the architecture firm, but we can hire them independently for engineering projects. And then one of the code requirements is building commissioning. So we've got a long list of commissioning agents that help us verify that we are indeed getting everything operating at its max efficiency once we install them for major building systems, roof systems, air conditioning systems, all those things. In addition to architects and I say professional services, we also deal with surveyors, geotechnical engineering firms, material testing firms, and testing and balancing, which is specific to air conditioning, water balance, and air balance on our schools. Again, approved by you, our board, in December 2022 was the pool of these professional services. which we engage routinely as we survey and geotech really come at the beginning of the project process before design really starts. Materials testing happens during the course of construction, and test and balance happens at the end. These are all entities that on some level are required by us to hire. They're generally independent third parties that suggest or review what is being designed by our architecture firms and installed by our contractors. Once we get through that pool selection of designers and professional services, at the same time, which is very early in the development process, we advertise for the construction manager at risks. So that's a two-step process, which is the choice that we make as a district to do it in a two-step process. We issue the request for qualifications. The government code says that we can review with our same general committee makeup that I just described for design services. We rank the firms that turn in their proposals, like the two that we opened today had 8 firms each. So the law says we can invite 5 to participate in the second step, which is the sealed pricing portion of the selection process. So we have to cut 3 out of and invite 5 to give us competitive pricing before we make the selection. The committee reviews the qualifications, the pricing. We look at the overall body of work that we've currently got, what they've currently got. We can choose to interview and talk to them if we're concerned about something or we need more clarification on what's going on or want to learn and meet and understand their team they're bringing to us. And then we'll bring that selection to you, our board, for approval for each individual project. So it's not in a pool format, it's for every project individually. So earlier this year in April, we did our CM at risk selection for our new high school, our new 7, 8, 9 campus next door to Grand Oaks, and 2 elementary schools one on Old Conroe Road and one in Evergreen, as we mentioned earlier. So these firms have been working with our design professionals in development of the programs, checking our budget along the way. The high school is a long design process, so we're not going to break ground until the end of 2024 on it. The 7, 8, 9 campus is also a long design process. It'll be, we're looking, our target is to break ground middle of the year on that one. And our elementary schools are the first shovels in the ground in the spring to open in August of 2025. The high school and the 7, 8, 9 will open in the year 2027 in some form or fashion. As we move through it, this is where our CM at risk and our architects work together to develop those. That's the process I more or less just described. We look at estimates, we looked at constructability reviews, looked at material selections, look at system selections, look at all the things that go into building the project to try to stay on our budget target. Because if we exceed our budget target, then we have other problems on other projects down the road. We have to maintain our budget targets for the success of the entire bond referendum and all the packages in it. But this is a team working together in concert with us in order to bring these packages to the market. Once the plans are at a point where we all feel comfortable with it, we do generate the guaranteed maximum price with the construction manager. So we advertise, the district handle the advertisements. The construction manager receives the bids from all the sub-trades, and then we analyze those sub-trades and then work with the architect and the construction manager to build a guaranteed maximum price we're happy with, and then we bring that to you, our board, for approval.
So at no point do we ever check the subcontractors, what they bid to what they actually produced and the cost? Meaning, we are not doing the subcontractors.
We don't hold any contracts with subcontractors.
Okay, so the contractor is the one that actually then is getting billed by the sub.
Correct.
And the sub is providing the backup only to the construction person, not to us.
I mean, we go through a long process with our architect every month and the contractor, and we can verify anything we want along the way at an invoice level. So what is, and if I'm going too far, just let me know, but the general subcontract is a lump sum agreement with the general contractor, with our construction manager. So the contract amount itself is, we agreed to pay $100,000 for item X. I subcontracted you for item X. It is $100,000. we work with them to break down the invoice that we see from the general contractor, where item X may be delivered in package A, B, and C. So we'll see package A, B, and C on the general contractor's invoice to us. During the audit process, we ask for all the subcontractor pay-apps so we can look at them along the way. If Brian Hayden, our internal auditor, was here, he would tell you what he does when he looks through them, because after the fact, the invoices tell a story of construction, right? For the people that understand what's in the schedules of values, you can see where they were. And every once in a while, Brian will ask me a question about invoice 12 in April of 2021 looked like it was ahead of or beyond the work that was actually in place, which is looking backwards into the past at a project that's already done. So he has me justify those when he sees them. And sometimes it is a cash flow question because I've got something else in the works, and sometimes it's a genuine oversight. But we rectify those along the way. And if we do have any findings, that's like before we bring it to you for the final payment to the general contractor, we're going to negotiate all those things on the front end. But during the normal invoicing process, our architects certify a notarized, stamped and notarized invoice that the work in place is true and correct and accurate to the best of their ability. My staff looks at those and signs off on it. So before I'll approve a pay app for Mr. Rice's department to pay, it's got an architect's signature on it, the architect's field construction administrator's initials on it, my coordinator's initials on it, my assistant director of construction's initials on it. Then it comes to me, put my initials on it. Then Mr. McCord sees it. Then Mr. Rice sees it. So there's lots of oversight before we ever send a check out the door. But it is sometimes painful, but we found an efficient way to do that. But there's so many verifications of work in place that we feel pretty comfortable, and I feel that our process protects us a great deal. Well, we look forward as we get towards the end of the project. So we're always looking at how much money's left to build on the contract, where are we at. So if I tell you every month we give you a board spreadsheet that says we're 63% complete, if we're 73% through the money, that wouldn't be congruent for you, and you have the right to ask me those questions. So when we report to you that they're 63% done, we should be 63% through the money with a plan to get the job finished.
So our contractors, when they bid projects, what are they looking to, what is their general or typical fee for what they do?
So that's a loaded question because it varies
course, all of mine
widely.
are.
Correct, but it varies widely across all of our, because the size of the project also has effect on the fee. This complexity of the project has an effect on the fee. Our fee for the new high school was 1.25% or 1.35%, if I'm not mistaken. Our elementary schools are 1.5% currently. That's new construction. I would expect the renovation work that's going to be advertised here shortly to be a bit higher than that, because renovations are inherently more difficult than greenfield construction with no roadblocks, so to speak. I mean, but we in our own attempt to attract more contractors to our program, knowing that our volume is growing, we've investigated with contractors we've never worked before, invited them in and asked them what they see in the marketplace. And you know, we have a lot of competition. Like I think for our new high school, which was a $300 million project, the spread in the fees from 1 to 5 was only $1 million, which sounds like a lot if you just say $1 million, but on percentage basis, it was relatively nominal. I mean, so the 5 contractors all submitted fees that were right in line with each other in the marketplace.
So they're doing a project like this for 1.5%, like an elementary?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So as we get through building that GMP based on those fees, and what you see when we close out the projects, I give you my accounting summary sheet that shows you the fee calculations, what they're making on their final fees. We'll bring it to you for the final approval, which is where we're here at now. Again, our board policy, CV local, requires that I bring forward and our board approve the project as complete before final payment. And when I bring it to you as complete, we have been through the finances, been through the accounting, and feel comfortable with the costs that they've been submitted and approved in our mind approved, asking you for approval, and then we'll issue those final payments. So just kind of recap where we go through the process. How many times do you hear about projects over the course of the life of those projects? When you call a bond election, you have a general idea what that bond election is going to contain. You approve our architect's assignment, so you'll see the architect assignment board item for our first wave of work at the board meeting next week. You'll approve individual construction manager selections for those projects along the way. You'll approve individual guaranteed maximum prices for each project along the way as well. Then you'll get a monthly update. You'll get tired of hearing me here in the near future, because as our project list grows and more things in progress, Dr. Null's going to have a hard time keeping my portion of the meeting short, but to give you enough information to really know what's going on. And then before we write the final check and there's zero balance due to the contractor, we bring it back to you again for one final approval, and then we move forward. So our current state of capital improvements. Now, these are specific to the 2023 bond. We're not going to go back and show you what's currently in progress. You'll hear about that next week. But our 2023 bond project schedule, this is draft, subject to many fluctuations, but this is our current target. So our bond pack, our propositions A, B, and C passed, which is why there's a strike through the pool. That's the graphic that you saw during the bond process. This is one of those documents that Dr. Null sent to you at the end of last week. And if you were to print it legibly, it's a 4-foot wide by 5-foot long piece of paper, so that you can read it without your glasses, or at least I can read it without my glasses if I'm real close to it. But there's a green bar on the left side where all the horizontal bars look like they're justified to. That is the election month. That's November 2023. So you can see everything that touches that green bar is stuff that we're currently starting the process of getting kicked off from a design and construction manager selection process. And as we move through, you see it kind of cascades down. We don't do them all at once. We do them in packages as we move through. The first round is aggressive, so because we're trying to get ahead of the marketplace. Like I said, we pay attention to what other school districts are doing as well. And we know that there's more bonds coming in the next 2 bond elections that happen over the next year. And we're trying to get our work out on the street as early as possible to make good use of the market where it is currently. This is much easier to really read, but as you're out in the district walking around visiting with people, these are things you can tell them to expect as we move forward in the future. Our new building, shovels in the ground, March of 2024 for the new elementary at the Woodlands High School feeder. It's on Old Conroe Road. Same March 24 for the Evergreen building. This summer, we're looking to get started on our Grand Oaks 789 campus. At the end of the year, we look to start the new high school, the new 9th grade for Caney Creek, and the new Conroe area junior high school. As we get into our elementary gym additions, this is where we're trying to be really aggressive, getting the first 4 gym additions out in the marketplace this summer.
Do we have those designs done on the gyms?
We started them today. So, like I said, it is aggressive, but we couldn't start. We started the high school and some of the longer durations before the bond election, presuming it would be passed. And then we're refunding ourselves as part of Mr. Rice's financial plan. But trying to get those elementary, we didn't preemptively start designing those because they were a separate proposition. So there's capital improvements in Prop A at those campuses, capital critical infrastructure improvements. But the separate proposition that had the gymnasiums left us, it wouldn't necessarily been a wise investment to start that early. So we've been working with our design firm, Stantec, for these 4 here over the last couple of weeks, getting proposals and everything kind of lined up. We had our kickoff meeting with them today and looked at our schedules, and they feel like they can get us a package together for the late spring, summer of 2024. Likewise, I've got a list of general contractor or construction manager selection processes that are going out. So we're going to try to get a construction manager on board with them so that to make good hay through that process and move quickly as well.
Since most of those will be almost the same design, I mean, they're other than how they connect to the school, or are they freestanding off of the schools, or are they connecting to the schools, or what is our plan on that?
we would prefer them to be integral and connected to the school, so you don't exit the building to go
To
to
go
the
over.
gym. So that's, our goal is to connect them directly.
So when we bid those, could we, for comparison reasons, could we look at bidding, I mean, because they're almost apples to apples, not all 100% apples to apples, but could we bid, like, for comparison purposes, CMAR and a CSP on them?
That's not the group that I would recommend that on, for sure.
Oh, okay.
Because of there's critical infrastructure that's unique to each one of them. Each site is unique to each one of them. Topography, like if you've been in Gladys's
Yes.
backyard, for example, Gladys and Anderson aren't the same site, or even the same, demographic neighborhood, right? So there's no guarantee they would look the same. We're also going to be bidding them. We've got 16 of them to do over a 4-year period. So it's, if we needed to, because if that was board's direction, it would be the end of the program. And then we would be engaging those design services earlier, ahead of our funding plan for it. But we would want to stretch that process out so that we design them completely and then bid them to the marketplace.
Okay,
So
thank you.
it's not impossible, but it's not what I would
I just think
recommend.
that if there's ever anywhere where we're as close as we can be to apples, it's a great time to test the market and see what would be, where our best value is at that point. So
And-
that's why I
and-
was asking.
No, and that's, in addition to asking Mr. Robertson to look at just our overall, CMAR versus CSP, we've also asked him to look at, what potential project would he recommend if we wanted to try a different delivery method in the future? Which project would he recommend that on, looking at our plans moving forward? So we're gonna get another outside view of that as well. Just, be it these or a future school or whatever it may be, we'll look at it.
Well, I think that's a great idea because there are a lot of, as you were saying, our scope is so much bigger with the growth that we're, this bond and how many schools and our projects and everything that we're having to look outside of our normal pool of contractors. And if they don't do CMAR, but they do CSP, then we could be getting rid of a quality construction or several quality construction people. So that's the only reason why I was asking. Thank you.
As we continue through the list, the summer is going to be pretty busy for us kicking things off. So next week at the board meeting, you're going to see our final bond 2019 bond package project, which is Campus Renovations 2024. It includes work at Lamar Elementary that is beyond what 2019 had in its bond plan, but we're able to make the bridge with that particular package, and to get assured that Lamar is going to be moving forward. As we're getting through the critical infrastructures, the Armstrong, Austin, Burnham Woods, Broadway, those are construction manager packages. Those 4 campuses go together. The same likewise on the elementary gym additions. It's Haley and Buckler together as a package, Ford and Creighton together as a package to try to get some economies of scale on those projects. One of the things that we would need to talk about if we were exploring the idea of CSP on anything would be procurement windows, right? So right now, you'll see another board item from our maintenance director here at the next board meeting for critical infrastructure chillers, right? Chillers right now it takes about 50 weeks to get them. So it's a year-long process to order and deliver a chiller. A lot of those packages, including the elementary gym additions, have some of that long lead equipment on them. So you can't, if I'm going to order it in 2023 and it's going to deliver in 2024 and install in 2024, we can't, it would be difficult to hire a contractor and have them sit idle for a year while they waited on material to deliver. Does that make sense? So
Easy.
Seaman Risk is better suited for that particular layout.
I actually have a question regarding the chillers and boilers, because I'm seeing that's a common thread with all of these
Indeed.
listed. Is that a coincidence?
No, and I wouldn't say it's a coincidence, but as we've grown as a district, so, and we've put bond packages in front of committees in the past, we have often deferred maintenance items. So what we've come now, we've deferred a few so far that we can't get beyond them. So like our maintenance department is buying the ones that are most critical, that have our highest likelihood of failing in the next 12 months.
Are we going to
So-
be able to to meet that need?
Absolutely.
I mean, the availability, supply chain issues,
Right.
no
so,
problem?
Right, and that's one reason why CMA Risk is a great method for the particular market right now is because we can pre-order early with a contractor on board that can, if they happen to come in early, he can mobilize quickly and install them. But it's still, we've seen over the last 2 years, more and more equipment get to about a year-long delivery schedule. So it makes something we used to be able to do in an 8-week summer, a 2-summer process. Because one is ordering, the second summer is installing.
Easy,
Okay.
that's a point, that's one reason we're coming to you right out of the gate next week. Because the consequences of a failing chiller are high.
Right, that's what's so
They're high
concerning.
financially for cost, but they're also high because it could put at peril our ability to hold schools. We want to hold it. And we've gotten lucky, and Marshall's team's worked some minor miracles to pull off chiller recovery at Grangerland and the Conroe High School Dockery campus. But just like all of us, our children are getting older, and so.
Yeah, I'd
it
like
is
to
a
avoid
major
this
concern.
position later on. I'd like to not get to this state moving forward.
Me too.
And we will be in better shape moving forward. I won't say that we're going to get it, that we won't still have failure. But if you look back at 2019, the bond committee, we went out at 807. We had to cut to 654. So a lot of the things that you're seeing fail today are things that should have been in the 2019 bond.
I understand
And were
that.
in the first one, and we cut them out.
Well, it may
This
have been
time-
2 or 3 bonds passed that we've been
No,
ignoring.
absolutely, but this bond that we just passed, the bond committee, Easy's team and Marshall's team worked together to identify everything that would be potential, that they would recommend in the next 4 years, and that committee put all of those items in this bond. So they didn't cut any. So hopefully, moving forward,
Right,
here will be better, I hope.
yeah. It
Until
should be.
something else breaks that shouldn't have, but.
So one other question, Easy. I see Oak Ridge High School 9th grade campus under major renovations.
Yep.
And then above that, we see the Oak Ridge High School Fine Arts emphasis. Where are we at on that Phase 3 for Oak Ridge High School?
So Phase 3 was not included in the 2023 bond package, so you're looking at Phase 2. Phase 1 was a 2019 bond, Phase 2 is a 2023 bond.
So this is Phase 2?
Correct. And when we design this one, we will design it with the intent to stand alone, so if there is no Phase 3, this would be
How did the 9th grade slip in there?
It didn't slip in there. It was a deliberate discussion from the bond planning committee and our admin staff. There are
Even in
some,
light of the Phase 3 that wasn't
well, Oak Ridge
included?
ninth grade is a completely separate facility.
I understand that, but I'm
Correct.
saying that we're currently in progress over at the high school campus, and we're lacking on that Phase 3. So did that not get brought into the discussion is my question?
Yes, it did. It was the bond planning committee decision. They chose to do the 9th grade.
Okay, that's good to know, because
Yeah.
we answer to the community on that one,
Yeah,
so.
it was a bond planning committee decision. They voted on it. So they voted the 9th grade in and did not vote the Phase 3 in.
Rough estimate on that 9th grade campus, what are we looking at dollar-wise? Do you know? Or you can get back to me. I hate to
I
put
can
you on the
have it for you
spot.
in just a matter
It should be
of seconds.
right on our website, yeah. Should be right.
But
Yeah.
it would be in the bond
I'm just, yeah.
advertising.
So we're not including Phase 3 of the high school for now?
Correct. That'd be a future bond.
Wasn't that $40 million?
Yeah, it was
That's up
roughly
there.
40, I think, Phase 3, 40 or 50 million would have been Phase 3 for that campus.
Remember too, the Oak Ridge High School Knocker campus is an older building, and it used to be York Junior High School.
Mhm. But it's been renovated, or there was an addition added
Aesthetically.
and some updates made, yeah.
Yeah,
I'm really
there-
excited about the flooring being renovated.
I'm sure a lot of schools are.
Yeah. They are especially excited.
So the bond package for Oak Ridge ninth grade, the all-in figure, which is design, commissioning, all the professional services, the soft costs, everything that we had allocated for it, is $23,491,000.
Thank you.
One question before you move
Certainly.
on. I see you're ready to click. The
I'll
five.
stay here all night.
Let's not do that. The 595 for the bond bonds. This covers all of this.
So yes, matter of fact, it's about time to click to the next slide, because this particular spreadsheet is what Mr. Rice and I confer on back and forth to build those bond sale numbers. So in the vertical lines, you'll see every 12 months, there's one that's extra wide because that one's got financial figures in it. So down at the very bottom, the green horizontal bars at the very bottom are the totals of what I project I would need for those bond sales. Now, this includes the buses and the transportation and the technology components. All those things are calculated in here. And we work with the departments to make sure they're allocated to meet their models. But if you open that spreadsheet you got from Dr. Knoll and scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see numbers that are very, very close to what Mr. Rice put on the bond sale calendar.
So the 595 is that page we just saw, plus,
To start. It won't like build the whole high school, but it'll make just the
but
first phase. Yeah.
starting those specific projects that you have listed on that page, plus anything from Prop B? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, but our current round of proposal acquisition right now is the design services for each of those campuses. So we've been getting design proposals from our design firms, negotiating those fair and reasonable prices. I started on surveys and geotechnical firms today, and I'll get those proposals next week, negotiating those fair and reasonable prices. And then we're working through the construction manager selections for these as well. So the fees that we're looking at covering at the moment are the initial design fees, which the design process is about 85%, 80 to 85% of the designer's contract. The last 15 or 20% is the construction administration. So the designer gets paid way on the front end because that's when their work really happens. The contractor then picks it up and moves it on and continues that cash flow curve throughout the life cycle of a project. So we're gathering proposals knowing that Mr. Roebuck has got a bond sale in January and it closed in February. So by the time we see work in the field for those firms, we have the ability to pay for them. So we're doing the homework paperwork-wise now so that we're ready to hit the ground running when the money arrives.
So easy, just to have an understanding, on this Oak Ridge High School Fine Arts, that's phase 2.
Yes.
So that will be completed.
That would be our charge to the bond committee and the constituents of Conroe ISD is to design that and complete it. And that one, looking back, the end of the dark blue bar on the Oak Ridge High School line, what I believe is 2026 is when we anticipate wrapping that phase up. Like I said, there could be anything that changes that along the way, design stretching out or market conditions changing affects our abilities, but our goal would be to start that design now so that we can, construction kind of continue that process. It may not be the same contractor, but we want to, since the campus is already used to construction happening, we want to keep that flow going so they don't get a year off to get comfortable before we disrupt them again.
Thanks.
But our goal here is to complete all of our 2023 bond projects by the August of 2028, which would be for use by our students, faculties, and staff for the 28-29 school year across the board. I've prepared more, but I'm happy to answer questions at this point.
He's got 187 hidden slides. If you'd like for him to unhide them, he could probably go. Any questions or comments for Mr. Foster or any other team? Mr. Foster's our final presentation tonight, so.
Maybe just a clarification, because we've talked a lot about contractual constellations, or we've talked about CSP and CMAR. Just for my benefit, for you to confirm or deny us, but so I have quite a bit of experience on the financial construction side, where we did lump sum contracts similar to a CSP type process. And I would just say from my perspective, we did everything we could to maximize our profit, to reduce our costs and maximize our profit. That was ours to keep.
You're speaking as a contractor?
Yes.
Correct. Yeah.
That was ours to keep.
When I was a contractor, I did the very same thing.
Knowing I come from a different industry than building schools, is that a similar expectation for CSP contracts that the contractor would try and maximize their profit that they get to keep?
I would not, I would question a contractor who was benevolent enough to give away their own profits without saying, this is a charitable donation, I'm looking for a tax write-off, right? Most of them are in business to make money. They keep their employees employed by making a profit. So when they can increase that profit, speaking from when I was a contractor building schools, not for Conroe ISD, I can tell you that once when we found a competitive advantage bidding to a public entity, and we knew we had a competitive advantage, we did capitalize on it as a contractor. And I don't know why any profit-making organization would not capitalize on their ability to make a better profit.
And knowing there's pros and cons to everything, one of the differences in this scenario between CSP and CMAR would be on CSP, any of those savings that contractor pockets, and that's his.
That is how those contracts are.
CMAR, we also have a shot at those savings.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
No problem.
I do have one question, just in case I'm missing it. I'm
Certainly.
looking at the general work descriptions that was attached to our email last week. I'm not seeing any, I'm seeing transportation on here. Are we covering any buses under this initial?
So in that general work description,
Amount.
I don't buy the buses, but I can tell you, working with
Mr.
Mr. Rice, we have moved all the bus money to the first bond sale so that they can bring that forward.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. We're going to buy the full allotment of buses just because of the length of time it takes to get those buses, and the prices are not coming down. So we're the whole allocation we have for buses will be purchased in this first sale.
How many would that, roughly, how many buses would that be?
Yeah, it's about 100 buses.
Okay.
About 100 buses.
All right, good. Thank you.
Didn't we, in a board meeting, Dr. Knoll, didn't you tell us there were over, like, we needed to replace 300 buses?
You're probably pretty accurate.
Yes, ma'am.
It's just what was provided in the bond was.
For as much as I would say, like, we covered all the costs of chillers and those things,
Buses?
we didn't on the bus
We
side.
fell short on that part.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're actively looking for grants. Mr. McCord and his group are.
We have 3 grants that we're actively working on. So we have around 570 buses right now. You're looking at probably what it looks like it's going to be around 150 grand a bus. Our last bid, that was couple of years ago, was around $131,000 for a bus. There is some inclination and incentive to go ahead and front order, but over 35% of our fleet is past its age. So it's important for the maintenance of the buses, but for the air conditioning, but also the quality of the bus. It matters to the student, it matters to the parent, and it also is directly something that is consistently attributed to by our drivers about whether they stay to drive with us or they go to a neighboring district that has newer buses. So it's all connected still.
And I think it's worth saying that more schools, more buses. So as we build these schools, those 100 buses aren't going to put a dent
Correct.
in what,
And I don't think
We
it'll be, I'll take the under on 100, because at 150 grand, depending on what the bid comes in at, it may not be 100. So, we'll do our best.
thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all very much for being here tonight. We appreciate it. Thank you to everybody that presented.
Thank y'all.
Hope you all have a great evening, and the time is 7:51, and we will adjourn.